All right, what's going on, everybody? For today's video, I wanted to just quickly dive into all the different relic options in SMITE 2 and when and why you'd want to go them in support, and also when you would not want to go them in support. In this video, it'll be really quick, but I will be talking about each of the different relic options and what they do, as well as that in-depth explanation of the certain situations you would or would not want to get them, as well as what team comps they're good into and whatnot. So with all that said, let's just go ahead and jump straight into it because I really want this to be a nice and quick video for you guys. First off, we have Purification Beads. The active on this is you become CC immune for 2 seconds with a 150-second cooldown. Essentially, you become immune to all stuns, knockups, crowd control effects, period, for 2 seconds. If you're currently affected by crowd control, you are cleansed from that effect for those 2 seconds, and it has a pretty long cooldown of 150 seconds. Pretty straightforward. Next up, we have Blink Rune. You are teleported to a target location up to 5.6 meters away. This effect can be used while firing another ability. It cannot be activated for 3 seconds upon dealing damage to a god or taking damage from a god. Damaging or killing an enemy god within 4 seconds of being used reduces the cooldown by 30 seconds, and it has a 180-second cooldown. So essentially, this is a short-range teleport that you cannot use while you're in combat with enemy gods. However, if you use it aggressively, you are rewarded for it by getting lower cooldowns on it. Now we have Aegis of Acceleration. You become invulnerable to damage and healing for 1.5 seconds, and you're prevented from taking any actions other than moving. Each instance of damage prevented provides you with 7% stacking movement speed for up to 3 times, so with a 140-second cooldown. So essentially, you're immune to all damage and healing. However, you also cannot do any damage or healing while that effect is active. And if you take tick damage while that's up, you're also gaining 7% movement speed as well, with a 140-second long cooldown. Now we have Phantom Shell. Shield yourself and allies within 5.6 meters for a 100 health plus 10 per level for 3 seconds. Gods take 20% plus 1% per level reduced damage from basic attacks, and they're also able to pass through players and player-made walls for the duration with a 120-second cooldown. So essentially, you give you and your teammates a shield. While that shield is active, they're taking less damage from basic attacks, and they're also able to move through walls and other players. Sundering Arc. You instantly deal 175 plus 25 per level true damage to jungle monsters and jungle bosses, and it deals 500 damage at level 13 and above. Hits gods, dealing 20 plus 3 per level true damage 3 times over 2 seconds with a 120-second cooldown, reduced by 30 seconds if used only on jungle monsters or bosses. So essentially, this is an AoE that does true damage to monsters as well as gods. If you're using it on a jungle boss or a monster, then it's doing 500 damage at max level. If you're using it on a god, it's usually doing about 200 damage, and that's ticking over 3 times. So keep that in mind, and it has a 120-second cooldown. And lastly, we have Agility Relic. This is a fun one that just got added to the game. It's not currently in ranked, but it is in casuals. Active, dash in the direction you are currently moving with a 10-second cooldown. This is basically a combat dodge. The passive, if you're a ranged character, your projectiles travel 40% faster. So if you're a ranged character, your auto attacks are shot out 40% faster. Not your attack speed, it's actual projectile speed. If you're a melee god, reduce your basic attack movement penalty by 15%. All right, that was all of the relics that are currently in SMITE 2. Now let's go ahead and talk about when and why you would or would not want to build them. So first off, we have Purification Beads. Typically, you're not going to go this on support because the support role has some other options you're able to go, like a Talisman of Purification. That is an item you can buy that gives you essentially the same effect, but it also gives it to your whole team. However, that being said, there are instances when this relic is pretty good. And those are going to be characters that lack some mobility and tend to get targeted pretty frequently. One of the core characters this is actually really good on if you're playing support is probably Aphrodite and sometimes Ymir. Those are characters that typically get focused in team fights. They also lack a lot of mobility. And on Aphrodite specifically, you can use this to escape a lot of abilities, and also lets you proc your ultimate ability, which is essentially the same effect plus an Aegis. So it allows you to do that and be a little bit safer. But like I said, generally speaking, you're not going this super often in support. I recommend not being totally against it because there are going to be some games where you absolutely need this to survive. Otherwise, you're just going to be feeding the entire time. Think about if the enemy team has a super heavy crowd control stack team, like we're talking like an Ares, a Morgan that's turning into the Ares, maybe a Hun Batch jungle, stuff like that. If they have heavy crowd control on the enemy team, then you may want to think about picking this up in the early game, even if you're not a necessarily immobile character, just because having that extra beats effect for yourself can oftentimes be a huge difference maker when it comes to those late game team fights. So for Blink, you typically go this on an aggressive support character. These are characters like Ares or Ymir or Cabrakan, characters that are really good when they're in your face, because this will allow you to do things that you aren't able to do otherwise. One of the most telegraphed and very known combos in Smite is the Blink Ares ultimate, where Ares will blink in, ult, and then pull you back into his team. This relic is very good on characters like that because it allows them to get that engage. You know, characters that lack that dash, it's really good for allowing them to go in. Now, with that combat penalty, it's not very good for escaping, but you can still also use it like that if you want to. However, it is very recommended that you use it to be aggressive because you also get that cooldown reset, and it's just overall a good relic if you're wanting to play aggressive. And now we have Aegis. Aegis, in my opinion, is the only relic that you should never go in support, typically. And the reason I say that is because all it does is it makes you damage immune for 1.5 seconds, but you're also not able to do anything in those 1.5 seconds. And typically in support, you want to be in there taking the damage. Even if you're an enchanter character, you want to be in there and you want to be using your abilities as often as you can. And this relic just does not allow you to do that. Now, what this relic is typically designed for is you go this on a backline carry against characters like Poseidon or Kukulkan with one-shot ultimates, and you need that survivability in those team fights. I understand the idea of maybe you're playing an enchanter character, so you're not as tanky, so you want that extra survivability. But that being said, even on an enchanter type of playstyle and support, you're still having more protections and just overall defense than other characters are in the game. So it's just not very good on you. And again, I really want to emphasize that 1.5 seconds of not being able to do anything is a huge difference maker in team fights, because that could be a ability that you were not able to throw out and it caused your teammate to die because you weren't able to save them. So in general, I really don't recommend ever going this in support. The only instance I would say it's okay is if maybe they have a team comp where there are 5 burst damage mages and the only thing they're doing is doing damage. In that case, then maybe, but even then you might just have a better time with other relic options. With Phantom Shell, you can actually get this as often or as not often as you like. Phantom Shell is a good passive option in support. It allows you to protect your teammates, and it's also very good against heavy auto attack team comps, and it's a direct counter to characters like Odin or Yamoja. My recommendation with Phantom Shell is if there's an Odin on the team, the enemy team, either you as the support or the solo laner needs to get Phantom Shell. With Yamoja, I don't think it's as important because Odin Cage right now in Smite 2 is the only ability in the game that has 100% anti-heal on it. So you really want to make sure that your teammates are not caught in that ability. With Yamoja ult, it's not as deadly typically, but that being said, it's still a consideration you might want to go. And other than that, like I was saying earlier, it does give you that extra reduced damage from auto attacks. So if they are a heavy auto attack team comp, this is not a bad option either. However, just keep in mind, this relic is typically meant for a more of a passive playstyle, and if you go this, you really need to be focused more on peeling than you are engaging. Now we have Sundering Arc. In my opinion, Sunder is the relic you're going to want to go about 80% of your games. The extra damage and buff secure and objective secure this relic gives you in support is phenomenal and should absolutely not be understated. Having the ability to just do an extra 200 damage in lane, or to secure a neutral camp or secure a Gold Fury, Pyromancer, or even a Fire Giant is absolutely crucial and can make huge differences in any team fight. If you're a newer player, I don't super recommend it because it's just not going to help you out as often because you're not going to know when and when not to use it. But if you're a moderate to experienced player, you should absolutely be going this almost every game unless you need Shell or Blink or even Beats like we talked about earlier. Sunder is very good. It allows you to keep and maintain early pressure and support, which is absolutely crucial right now. That's the way the meta is and has been for a while. If you lose early pressure in duo, you kind of just snowball for the rest of the game and you're not having a great time. Getting that early pressure is very important, and Sunder lets you do that. And it also lets you keep that pressure in the early, mid, and then the late mid to late game. It's a very important relic. I highly recommend you get it in most games. The only times you wouldn't want to get it is if the enemy team doesn't have good secure on their own, so you don't necessarily need Sunder. If your team has good secure, then typically speaking, you won't need it as much, but even that, with just the duo lane in mind, it's still very good. And lastly, we have Agility Relic. You really only ever go this if you're playing a pretty aggressive character in support. So if you're playing like a assassin support like Fenrir or Hunbats, that reduced basic attack penalty on the melee is pretty nice. Or if you're playing a hunter support with arrows bow build like Cupid, then you could get this. But overall, that Combat dodge isn't super useful in Smite because it doesn't give you any iframes, so you're still taking damage most of the time. However, if you're a new player, this is probably going to be very good on you because then you have a extra tool to your disposal. A lot of characters in Smite don't really have an escape, especially a lot of supports. So having that tiny little extra dash up every 10 seconds could help keep you alive in a lot of fights. But at the same time, if you're a new player, keep in mind that that also might be a detriment to you in your learning of the game, because then you're not actually properly learning how to play around characters with no escapes and how to play characters with no escapes. So overall, I would say get this if you think you could benefit from the dash, but I wouldn't recommend it in most games. It is currently not allowed in ranked because they just released it and they're still testing some stuff out. It also recently got a passive change. Before it used to give a whole different passive for melee characters. So that all being said, this is really your own discretion. I don't recommend it, but that being said, you can still go it if you just want to have fun. And at the end of the day, this is a game you're meant to have fun in video games, so do what you want to do. And with all that said, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like and comment. Let me know what you think and let me know what kind of video you want to see next. I make support content on my channel only, and I love you all so much. Peace out.